I don't go to many tech events these days, especially now that they're streamed online. It's fine. Obviously, something like last year, the Apple Vision Pro is totally worth the trip because the chance to try it out is certainly a big deal. Well, I guess that one we can we can revisit that one, but
A
but in
medium
this
deal.
case, yeah, well, I knew there was the Build Developer Conference. There was also this other event that I didn't really realize was separate from Build, which was talking about Copilot plus PCs, and I thought it was pretty compelling. So yeah, I was surprised and excited to the extent that I'm a nerd, and
Right.
so I'm a business nerd, and I'm excited to the extent that I felt that event pulled together a lot of different Microsoft threads that I've been writing about or even been a part of for going on 12, 15 years.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say we got a full Sydney from you this week, but there was a hint of that enthusiasm and wonder as you reacted to what you saw. So why don't we start there? What are Copilot plus PCs, and why did you find them intriguing?
Yeah, I would not put it in the Sydney category, just to be clear. And I just want to double down on like what I was excited about. You go back to when I was at Microsoft from 2011 to 2013. I was working on the Windows App Store, the sort of the Windows 8 launch. A very, the way I always characterize it is it was a lot of fun up to the launch, and then after the launch, it wasn't nearly as fun. But
Mm.
one of the parts of that launch was Windows' first sort of ARM computer, or the Surface sort of line in general, and it launched with an ARM chip, and it was a dog. It was it was slow. No software ran on it. Not even Microsoft's own software, like Office, ran on it. And so that was, and it just there was a sense of, back then, actually, I think the real threat Microsoft felt, they kind of already, or at least parts of the company already knew they had lost mobile. But then there
Hmm.
was a real sense of fear about the iPad, and the iPad sort of disrupting Windows more broadly, and feeling that they needed to have a sort of response to this. And it just wasn't very good. And the reason I bring that up is that's one of the threads that came through this week. All the PCs, all the devices at this event were ARM based. They were thin. They apparently have good battery life. They had all these sort of qualities to make something cool. And just it was sort of just like satisfying from a personal perspective to see, well, it took a
It
decade,
took
but
nearly a
they made
decade,
it.
but yeah, there you go.
Well, and so all this is tied together with, obviously, just Windows being on ARM is not necessarily a special thing. You also had the AI sort of component. And
Hmm.
Microsoft had a Windows AI event last fall that, or it's supposed to be a Surface event, and it ended up being completely about Copilot. And in this case, sort of the consumer version of Copilot that would be in your Windows PC. In January, they have this big announcement that every PC will have a Copilot button. I'm like, okay,
Right.
well, congratulations on the new button. I mean, that is a very funny sort of bit where I'm sure it took a lot of work within Microsoft to herd cats and get the whole Windows ecosystem to agree to put a new button on their keyboards. Like, I don't want to diminish it, but there's never been a greater sort of example of the disconnect between internal excitement at crossing the finish line
Right.
and the external, like,
Well,
sort of
especially
like
because it's like, so what does it do? Well, it pulls up Copilot. It's nothing that groundbreaking,
right.
but congrats
And
on the
so meanwhile,
button.
well, right. And meanwhile, you have like AMD and Intel and stuff. They're going on and on about AI PCs. And this is in the context of they've had a rough few years because there is this real lull in the market post COVID. A lot of people pulled forward their PC purchases to that period.
Hmm.
And so it like the problem is that, oh, wait, it feels like just another marketing term, right? AI PC. And what happens is, and you see this in the Windows market, is you will have the dumpiest, crappiest, piece of POS sort of notebook that can't
Hmm.
hold a charge, that, the jet engines take off, or the fan sounds like a jet engine taking off when you try to load a single web page. And they'll slap that button on there, and now it's an AI PC. And it's like, it was setting up for this category to be like just one of the examples of the Microsoft ecosystem generally, where sure, there might be some good ideas in Redmond, but by the time it actually filters out to products, it's just generally it's the sort of
Right. Well,
experience
and
that
if
drives you
every
to buy a
PC
Mac.
is an AI PC, then no PCs are AI PCs, and it doesn't really matter or add
Exactly.
value as a marketing term.
Yep. And so in this case, so the big thing here was these Copilot Plus PCs. And I kind of mocked the name Copilot Plus. I think it made more sense in the context of the build keynote, which I wrote about my
Hmm.
update on Wednesday, which is Microsoft is looking to build new platforms. That's what Microsoft does. Microsoft is a platform company. Those platforms are called Copilot. And what Copilot means does change, but I think the way to think of Copilot is Windows for AI. That's sort of what it is from a sort of strategic perspective. And in this case, because they own that name, they own that trademark, they can no one like Microsoft doesn't own AI PC, right? They own
Yeah.
Copilot Plus PC. The plus kind of irritates me, but
I mean,
so
look,
you have
the title for this episode
Microsoft
is
is going
can
to Microsoft.
Can Microsoft make PCs cool again? I'll just say Copilot plus PC branding is not a promising start as far as coolness is concerned, but it
It's
sounds
really
like
not.
the hardware is impressive at least.
Well, so they have a minimum level of hardware. So they have CPUs, GPUs, and NPUs, which, Macs and iPhones have had for a long time. The high end sort of, the Pixel phones in particular have one from Google. And the big thing is it has a guaranteed level of performance for doing AI operations. The NPU
Hmm.
basically is a super optimized portion of the chip, or these are all on one chip to be clear, but it's like a distinct sort of bit that runs these operations super efficiently and at a very high rate of speed. We've talked about the difference of like calculations. These are like highly parallel sort of operations. It's taking like it's beyond a GPU because it's even more simplified, but that means it's even more efficient and can be even more high performance if you have work tailored sort of for that NPU. It has a minimum of 16 gigabytes of RAM, which we you need memory to run sort of AI applications. Even
Right.
these small models take 2 or 3 gigabytes of memory. This is something, by the way, that Apple I think screwed up on. The fact that the most recent MacBook Air still starts at only 8 gigabytes of RAM. When Tim Cook gets on an earnings call and say we ship the best AI, I mean, even Apple's doing it, the AI PC. It's like with 8 gigabytes of RAM, no, you didn't. That's kind of a
Yeah.
problem. And it has to have an SSD. Now, again, these aren't supercomputers, but if you buy a computer with this label, it's going to be a good computer. And Microsoft is going to restrict features so they run on this computer. And this isn't it's nice for sure for their partners in that they can ideally sell better higher end computers, but it's a legitimate thing. Like there's stuff you can do if you have certain levels of performance that you don't otherwise. And this is where it gets to Microsoft bringing all this AI stuff to bear. So number one,
Hmm.
there's going to be local models on the device. There's going to be and you as a developer writing an application can count on those models being there. And there's entire frameworks and APIs that you can build to. The device will also seamlessly hand off jobs to the cloud. Microsoft is, if you didn't know, has a lot of AI sort of servers running in the cloud.
Right.
And so you get this sort of experience, at least in theory, with applications that seamlessly use on device, seamlessly go to the cloud. And we will have to see how this turns out because it's going to depend on developers taking advantage of this. But it is legitimately like this is an actual AI PC. Like this deserves
Hmm.
the name. Now they could have the name for lots, because it's a common name. They need to limit it, but that's cool. And it's platforms are exciting. It's cool to see something in the hands of developers where they can do new things that weren't possible previously. That's the best part of a platform. And
Yeah.
so it's fun to see Microsoft deliver on that. And it's like I said, from the business nerd sense, to see all these different threads sort of come together in one event of all the stuff they've been working on, again, for literally over a decade in some cases, to ship in a device. It's cool. It's cool to see.